good morning to you, Grenada Carrier crew, pretty much like the rest of the Eastern Caribbean. Wherever you are joining us from, welcome to this segment of Good Morning Grenada. It's Wednesday, it's the 9th, is it the 9th? Yeah, the 9th day of November in the year 2022. It's overcast on the outside, and I just want to implore you that if you're leaving home, please walk prepared for rain. All right, we'll be getting some confirmation just a little after 7 o'clock thereabout when we have the latest weather forecast for today. But in the meantime, be prepared. All right, preparation is key. And of course, as usual, as is customary this morning, we start off with the word of the day. And you might find that you heard this word before. Well, yes, you have heard it before. But it is said repetition creates a learning. And that is a sort of forced repetition this morning. Due to a little technical glitch, I have to rerun this one, okay? All right, so the word for today is the word rabble. Yeah, rabble. R-A-B-B-L-E. And rabble is used to refer to a large group of loud people who could become violent, like a mob. Or usually in the phrase rabble, we usually use the phrase rabble to refer to the great mass of regular people as contrasted with the elite. Now, in the latter case, the word is typically applied in a humorous or exaggerated way to suggest the attitudes of the powerful and wealthy. What comes to mind? Insurrection. Yeah, the U.S. is in focus this morning with the midterm elections, and there'll be lots of rabble here, there, and everywhere, with the election deniers and so forth. America, yeah? Good. All right, now, the word rabble can be used in this manner. An angry rabble rushed the stage when the band cut their performance short. Yeah, an angry rabble rushed the stage when the band cut their performance short. It can be interchanged by saying an angry group of loud people rushed the stage when the band cut the performance short. And you can add in a violent way at the end. It can also be used in that way. The magazine's apparent aim is to induce envy with peeks into the beautiful homes of celebrities who live far away from the rabble, far away from large, loud groups of people. Nice. Good. And the thought for the day, a good attitude laced with frequent laughter is the key to a happy, healthy, pain-free life. Have you ever laughed that your belly cramped? Or you get out of breath? That's therapeutic, eh? Yeah, it is. It is always advised to be around people who make you laugh frequently. The problems of the day will be there. Yeah, they will be. The financial woes won't go because of laughter, but at least it distracts you from, that constant bother interfering with your hypertensive state, yeah? So a good attitude laced with frequent laughter is the key to a happy, healthy, pain-free life. Can you imagine there are folks who are in relationships, marriages, and they can't make one another laugh? That's crazy. What a life. If I've got to live that kind of life, His Majesty Prison, here I come. Yeah. So laugh as much as you can. But always remember to be around people who make you laugh a lot, yeah? Be in the right circle. It's a waste of time and energy. And it's foolish to be around people who demotivates you. They're pessimistic. They're, always bringing up things from the past, not so pleasant things. Taking jabs at you technically. Those kind of people that, you consider them to be a friend there in your circle. But they say things to humiliate you technically and laugh at it. Yeah, be away from this set of people. Be around people who motivate you, who push you to be your best. Be around people who can lovingly correct you. If you're doing something wrong, they should be able to tell you, hey bro, this is wrong. What you did there was wrong. You need to apologize. You need to fix this. Don't be around the hypocrites who watch you go down the wrong road and laugh at it. Make you feel, that you're tough. You're a tough cookie. Nah. Again, parents, always ensure that you know who your children's friends are. Have an idea as to who their best friends are, yeah? The old adage that says, show me your friends and I'll tell you who you are, comes into play there, right? Yeah. Play an integral role in your child's life. Know everything that you can. Know their favorite food, their favorite hangout spot, their favorite game, their favorite books. You know what I'm saying? Good. So remember that, folks, the word for the day, rabble. It is used to refer to a large group of loud people who could become violent, or usually in the phrase rabble, we use it to refer to the great mass of regular people as contrasted with the elite. In the latter use, the word is typically applied in a humorous or exaggerated way to suggest the attitudes of the powerful and wealthy. Revisit it, right? Try to interchange it with, in your conversation today. That's the way you're going to develop your repertoire. You understand? Yeah, when I use these words, Clyde Belfon comes to mind. He's got a French touch to it, the French language is very romantic. Je t'aime, All right, what we'll be looking at, well, as a matter of fact, I hinted to you yesterday that this morning, hopefully, if all goes well, I will be conversing with Mr. Tyrone Buckmire. He is the director of the Legal Aid and Counselling Clinic. We will be having a conversation with him this morning via Zoom, and if time permits, we'll look at the Grenada Trade Union Council refutes Prime Minister Deacon Mitchell's statements that the union leaders refused to meet with him as political leader of the National Democratic Congress before the general elections. There has been some back and forth there. Yeah, we want to take a peek into that if time permits this morning. But I think the conversation with Tyrone and I will be, a very, very current one. Yeah, and he's a guy that can talk. Also this morning, well, if you're like me, that, a news freak, yeah, the midterm elections in the U.S., we're looking at the results. Will the Democrat regain control of the House and the Senate? What are the implications for the region? Yeah, there are folks that might say, what that has to do with us? Well, it has a whole lot to do with us. Because we are, when we look at the trajectory of both parties, the Democrats and the Republican, and I understand there are some U.S. citizens here who are Grenadians, but they're U.S. citizens and they are Republicans. Well, I'm a Democrat. I believe in democracy. Shanda Paul has been inducted into the ICC Cricket Hall of Fame. Yeah. Does that merit him becoming the West Indies head coach? Another conversation to be had. Nonetheless, folks, we've got to break it off here because on Classic, we've got the AM edition of News, Sports, and the Weather. Those of you on the GBN TV, we've got a rebroadcast of last evening's television news. Stay with us. We'll be back after 7 with the conversation. Don't you go anywhere.
From Television Center at the Grenada Broadcasting Network, I'm Kenroy Batiste. Several parts of St. George and St. David were flooded due to the inclement weather today. Severe flooding was seen at the lower part of River Road, where construction of defense walls for the St. John's River project continues. Roland Michi Charles posted this video from St. David.
Folks, La Colombe. This is La Colombe Bridge. Yeah.
Weather models signal that the axis of an Atlantic tropical wave should traverse the island chain on Wednesday morning, inducing cloudiness, showery activity, periods of rain, and a medium chance of thunderstorms across the state of Grenada if conditions within the wave environment remain favorable. According to forecasters at the Met Office, there is a medium chance of flooding and/or landslides between Wednesday and Friday if moderate or heavy showers or prolonged periods of rainfall occur. Live joining us on the telephone now is forecaster Jason Robertson. Good evening, sir. Thanks for joining us.
Yes, good evening.
Right, so the weather today, inclement weather, no doubt. A lot of flooding has happened, in particular in St. George and St. David. Give us a sense of what caused it all.
Well, we had some area of convection that passed through this morning towards the south and center of the island that give us this heavy downpour, moderate to heavy downpour that results in this type of activity.
Okay, right. And so in the next 24 hours, tell us about the conditions which we can expect or should expect.
Well, there is a tropical wave with its axis along 56 by earlier in the morning. The axis should be in the vicinity of the island, and this could produce some instability and giving us some more showers, which could be moderate to heavy. And then as a result, then we could have minor flooding and small-scale slide possible because the ground is already soaked.
Okay, so is it safe to say that people in low-lying areas need to pay particular attention?
Well, yes, people in low-lying areas and in vulnerable areas especially.
All right. Okay. Very well indeed. Okay. So we'll keep tabs with the Met Office at Maurice Bishop International Airport for more information as and when it becomes available. All right. Forecaster Jason Robertson, thank you very much.
Okay, sir.
Now, an 8-point action plan was recently launched to promote media and information and literacy and combat mis- and disinformation. Gerard Joseph has the details.
During the launch of a situation report and action plan for media and information literacy and disinformation in the Caribbean last week, the importance of building strong foundations in the information era resonated. Paul Hector, representing UNESCO, noted that the foundations of facts, not fantasy, and reliable information, not disinformation, must be the building blocks, as facts continue to be undermined by rumors and disinformation.
I think, as you recall, Maria Ressa, journalist and winner of the 2021 Nobel Peace Prize, she underscored the fact that a world without facts means a world without truth and trust. And if we don't have truth and trust, we will not be able to conquer any of these major challenges that face us today.
Grenada was part of the 8 countries that participated in the situation report produced in collaboration with the Media Institute of the Caribbean, the Association of Caribbean Media Workers, and with support from the UNESCO Cluster Office for the Caribbean.
Fortunately, along with partners like those who gathered here and others, we can and are taking bold steps to reverse this trend. We're building the public's capacity for critical thinking and helping to take steps to restore trust in information and also restore trust in journalism.
Coming from the report are proposed recommendations for enabling sustainable and effective media standards to improve media information literacy across the issues of disinformation and trust in news, and explore potential solutions and innovations for media information literacy in the Caribbean region.
Media and information literacy, that is to say, the interrelated competencies to effectively navigate the new information, digital, and communication landscapes of emerging knowledge societies, is truly indispensable. Journalists play a key role in producing and disseminating public interest information. So the work of journalists of filtering, checking, analyzing facts is central and becomes even more important than ever, given these circumstances.
Recognizing the key role journalists play in ensuring that information is a public good, Hector impresses that measures are needed to strengthen journalists' ability and capacity to function properly. I am Gerard Joseph for GBN News.
The youngest member of parliament speaks on politics and what he would like to see for young people like himself. Here's the report.
The youngest senator in Grenada's parliament, Nilan Franklin, says he has always wanted to be of service to people. And now that he has accepted this position, he takes it seriously. As a young senator, Franklin, a member of the New National Party, believes now is the time for young people to get involved in politics. He pointed to the National Youth Parliament as one area that stimulates potential youth development.
It's important that we understand where we are going, not just as Grenadians, but people in the world, human beings generally. When you look at the political demographic globally, you realize that it's more the middle age to the upper age or older folks, and they make decisions for what that would affect us as the younger generation. It is important, in my view, for us as young people to get involved so that the policymakers could understand how we feel and what we think is best for us.
The young senator says he believes he has a responsibility to set a positive standard for others to follow.
This is an excellent opportunity, and it's one that has to be looked at carefully on my path, because I don't want to obscure the ability of, or hinder the ability of other young people, or the perception of other young people of politics, and deter them from wanting to get involved. And I think I will use the opportunity to encourage as much young people to get involved.
Appearing on GBN's To The Point program Tuesday, Franklin noted a great part of his grooming came from within the walls of the Grenada Broadcasting Network. The young senator was put on the spot somewhat by host GT when he was asked this question, to which he responded as such.
You know, if an opportunity for you is presented to you to go further in this, to help in further nation building, would you accept it? When I'm saying opportunity, well, the current party says, you know, Neil, and I think we could offer you a place in this in the government that could lead you to help in further developing Grenada. Would that be something you would consider?
Like I said earlier, I depend heavily on the Almighty Father to guide me, and at this time I don't want to be one who opposes for opposing's sake, but to give criticism where criticism is due and necessary, and to hold, especially the current administration, because they've campaigned on things and made promises that a lot of, especially young people, expected to see. So my responsibility now is to hold them accountable to what they've promised and what they are doing.
Christina John, GBN News.
Rebecca Television Center Grenada has seen an increase in diabetic patients, an increase from 10% to 12% in recent times.
Diabetes, according to the Center for Disease Control, is the 7th leading cause of death worldwide. Access to diabetes care, education to protect tomorrow is the theme for World Diabetic Day, which will be observed on November 14th, 2022. Dr. Carol Martin, Doctor of Nursing Practice, explains.
According to the latest update on the International Diabetic Federation, 12.6% of Grenadians are diagnosed with diabetes. Who have a sedentary lifestyle, if you have a history of diabetes, if you do not exercise, you do not eat right, you will eventually have diabetes because these are some of the complications, these are some of the risk of that becoming a diabetic. The mentality has to change in terms of understanding that if your grandmother has had it or your mother had it, you don't necessarily have to have it, or you can manage it, so it's not a family trait, it's a disease that can be prevented.
Marcia Charles, Secretary at the Grenada Diabetic Association, says she wants the Grenadian public to be aware of the complications and seriousness of diabetes. The association will conduct a number of activities to mark the occasion, beginning with a church service and health fair, among others.
We just want to invite persons, especially the whole of Grenada, to be part of the Blue Fridays. Every Friday we are asking every citizen to wear blue as we, being compassionate with persons who have diabetes. One of the things we want persons to know is to know their numbers, know how much your cholesterol is, know how much the number for your blood pressure. Know those things, because these are some of the complications of having diabetes. So we just want to encourage persons as we go through the month and as you learn, please be aware that it is really a serious issue and the complications that come with it. One of the things we notice is the renal failure, and it's just a pity.
Dr. Martin highlighted the different types of diabetes.
And diabetes is known as juvenile diabetes, and it is usually seen in the teenagers and young adults. There is no production of insulin in that diabetic range. Type 2 is where the pancreas makes insulin, but not enough. That age usually ranges from 20 to 79 or so. Gestational diabetes is during the pregnancy times when the woman is pregnant and is usually diagnosed until the child is born. And also the mother is not diagnosed after she gives birth.
Christina John, GBN News.
The Pan American Health Organization is on a quest to strengthen Grenada's immunization system. More in this report.
People's hesitance to vaccines are still very high. An engagement this week involving participants of the Pan American Health Organization seeks to strengthen the country's immunization system and increase acceptance and confidence in vaccines. Acting Chief Medical Officer Dr. Sean Charles says the time has come for a paradigm shift to improve the country's immunization rates. According to the CMO, immunization is one of the most important public health interventions known to have led to the control of many non-communicable diseases.
Safe injection practices, quality vaccines, and the monitoring of ESAVI. And this is the reason why this event is very important. I hope that you will find this workshop very useful. as we aim to continue to build capacity to effectively monitor events that are associated with vaccines or that are supposedly attributable to vaccines. And the goal is so that we continue to ensure that our public is confident that we are providing a safe and effective, proven intervention that controls diseases.
Facilitator of the workshop is Colonel Rock.
The workshop is part of a series of ISAVI trainings that we've been conducting throughout the Caribbean and the Americas, and we have been doing that over the last 6 months. So I wanted to take advantage of our presence of myself, my other colleague here, Victor Osorio, and our other colleagues who are from headquarters who will be joining us virtually. Ask as many questions as you need to ask, get all your concerns addressed, and make the most of this opportunity.
Nursing Officer Nestor Edwards is hopeful that the training will reinforce the country's capability to respond to diseases should the need arise.
Building capacity in areas such as this would only strengthen our ability as a healthcare system to respond, in an appropriate manner to events of public health conditions. We've had many of them within the recent years, such as Ebola. We've just coming out of the COVID pandemic. And so our ability as a healthcare system to respond to those conditions are very, very important.
1 week workshop will focus on strengthening Grenada's surveillance capacities in events that attribute to vaccination or immunization. The workshop, which began on Monday, November 7th, will culminate on Friday, November 11th. Christina John, GBN News.
2.5 years after the death of Chanel Alexis, her accused murderer, Mitch Phillips, stands trial in the High Court. That's what's creating a buzz on social media.
We present the news. You analyze the various topics and distill the issues as they unfold. Your distillation points matter as we're about to highlight them in our Social Buzz report.
Mitch Phillip now faces the High Court for the alleged death of his girlfriend, Chanel Alexis of St. Mark, as the trial now gets underway. The non-capital murder case brought against Victoria St. Mark resident Mitch Phillip in connection with the May 30th, 2020 death of his 23-year-old common-law wife, Chanel Alexis, commenced at the St. George's No. 1 High Court on Monday. The matter gets underway nearly 1 year after the 51-year-old Phillip was committed to stand trial in the High Court for non-capital murder at the end of his preliminary inquiry before Magistrate Francine Foster at the Victoria Magistrates Court in November 2021. Social media users took to the comment section to share their thoughts about this development. The following views are that of members of the public and not of the Grenada Broadcasting Network. Shadeen Thomas says, all you take real long with this. Pray justice is served. Rachel Charles says, I'm surprised they had to call in someone from Trinidad who examined the evidence that something was pushed inside her, as well as there being restraint marks. And the findings by our experts were inconclusive. Rachel Charles further added, I'm just so shocked that our investigators couldn't assess this. It sounds so straightforward. Solomon Christopher concludes and questions the woman had botched abortion. If that's the case and she agreed, who did the procedure? And if it's him, the charge should be involuntary manslaughter.
That's what's buzzing tonight. We encourage you, our viewers and listeners, to submit your think pieces on trending topics locally, regionally, and internationally via our Facebook page and YouTube channel. Continue to share your thoughts and concerns with us on our social media platforms.
state-of-the-art Ultratech gasoline and diesel. Available only at Rubis stations.
From the NLA, daily picture cash flow and play with. You will be supporting sports and culture, nation building and our future. So go out and play, folks, make it a must. You will see what the National Lottery is doing for us. When you play picture cash flow and play with, the NLA will support you all the way.
Starting September 30th, Monday to Friday, these 3 games will be drawn mid-morning, 9:45 a.m., midday, 12:45 p.m., and evenings, 7:45 p.m. The National Lotteries, supporting sports, culture, and nation building.
Sunday money
Affordable quality products delivered to you via superb service. We are Superb Distributors, wholesalers and authorized agents for trusted products you know and love, like Rika Juices, Pure Heaven products, Bibin diapers, New Bright laundry detergent, Allegra pasta, and more.
Contact Superb Distributors at 435-2948 for superb quality and service.
Good morning, Grenada meter reader.
Morning, Mr. Meterman. I'm glad I caught you. Last month, I got a very high bill, and I don't understand why.
Last month, we were not able to access your meter, so we had to estimate the bill.
So what can I do to ensure that my meter is easily accessible?
Well, you can get your licensed electrician to move your meter outside of the gate or directly in front of the house.
Well, I'll consider that.
Grenlec, energizing our Grenada.
Sound that's
WeatherGuard Pro. For every project, there's only one Pro.
On the road with the NLA, live on Hot 98, Thursdays at 10 a.m. and on GBN Television, Thursdays at 8 p.m. Meet the players, the agents, learn more about the exciting games of the NLA and how it has been transforming lives across the country. Promotion runs until December 15th.
You know, one day I woke up and, you know, they painted a set of pedestrian crossing all along the streets. You know, nobody told us how to use that thing properly.
I know how.
You're serious?
Every safe, good driver knows about these things. As a driver, you have to be very attentive. You know you're coming up close to a pedestrian cross, you start slowing down immediately, looking to see if there's any pedestrian on the side getting ready to cross. If there is, you stop on the line that is a certain distance before the crosswalk. Then you would see the pedestrian put their hands out, looking directly at you, indicating that they are going to cross. And only when you have come to a complete stop, that is when they will quickly and safely cross to the other side. And then you continue happily on your journey.
Stop, look, hand out, eye contact, wait for pedestrian to cross. Then you happily continue on your journey.
This message is brought to you by this group of insurance companies, the Traffic Advisory Body, and the Traffic Department.
In December 2019, there was a cluster of pneumonia cases in China. Investigations found that it was caused by a previously unknown virus, now named the 2019 novel coronavirus. In this video, we'll take a quick look at what's currently known about the virus. Keep in mind that this is a new virus, and what's known about the virus now might change in the future. Coronaviruses are a large group of viruses. They consist of a core of genetic material surrounded by an envelope with protein spikes. This gives it the appearance of a crown. Crown in Latin is called corona, and that's how these viruses get their name. There are different types of coronaviruses that cause respiratory and sometimes gastrointestinal symptoms. Respiratory disease can range from the common cold to pneumonia, and in most people, the symptoms tend to be mild. However, there are some types of coronaviruses that can cause severe disease. These include the severe acute respiratory syndrome coronavirus, first identified in China in 2003, and the Middle East respiratory syndrome coronavirus that was first identified in Saudi Arabia in 2012. The 2019 novel coronavirus was first identified in China. It initially occurred in a group of people with pneumonia who'd been associated with a seafood and live animal market in the city of Wuhan. The disease has since spread from those who were sick to others, including family members and healthcare staff. There are many cases at present, and the disease has spread within China and also to a number of other countries. So, where did the virus come from? It's known that coronaviruses circulate in a range of animals. Sometimes these viruses can make the jump from animals to humans. This is called a spillover and could be due to a range of factors such as mutations in the virus or increased contact between humans and animals. For example, MERS-CoV is known to be transmitted from camels and SARS-CoV from civet cats. The animal reservoir of the 2019 novel coronavirus is not known yet. How is it transmitted? The exact dynamics of how the virus is transmitted is yet to be determined. In general, respiratory viruses are usually transmitted through droplets created when an infected person coughs or sneezes, or through something that has been contaminated with the virus. People most at risk of infection from the novel coronavirus are those in close contact with animals, such as live animal market workers, and those who are caring for people infected with the virus, such as family members or healthcare workers. So, how does the disease present? Well, from what is known so far, there can be a number of symptoms ranging from mild to severe. There can be fever and respiratory symptoms such as cough and shortness of breath. In more severe cases, there's been pneumonia, kidney failure, and death. The mortality rate is not known yet. How can we tell whether someone is infected? The infection can be diagnosed by a test called PCR, or polymerase chain reaction. This test identifies the virus based on its genetic fingerprint. There's currently no specific medication for the virus, and treatment is supportive care. There's currently no vaccine to protect against the virus. Treatment and vaccines are in development. How do we prevent transmission of the virus? This new virus currently has a limited geographic spread. However, there are a number of standard hygiene practices that have been recommended to protect against infection and further spread. These include covering your mouth and nose when coughing or sneezing with a medical mask, tissue, or flexed elbow, avoiding close contact with those who are unwell, the appropriate use of masks and personal protective equipment, especially in a healthcare setting, washing hands regularly with soap and water, or alcohol-based hand rub. Actions that can be taken to prevent infection from an animal source include avoiding unnecessary unprotected contact with animals.
Viewers and listeners, welcome to the program, this segment of the program. And as I promised you this morning, well, I've got even a better result, because intentionally I was supposed to link with Mr. Buckmire via Zoom, but being the gentleman that he is, he chose to join me in studio. Good morning, Mr. Buckmire.
Good morning, Gordon, and good morning to your listeners and viewers out there.
All right. It's been quite a while since we had this sort of chit-chat.
Indeed. And it's almost unfortunate that we have to have a chit-chat about such a heavy subject at this time of the morning. But
well, we got to do what we got to do.
Yeah, exactly.
We got to do what we got to do. Folks, in case you do not know Mr. Tyrone Buckmire, he is the director of the Legal Aid and Counselling Clinic. And having said that, could you give us a sort of background as to what are the functions and the mission of the Legal Aid and Counselling Clinic?
All right, thank you. Well, Legal Aid and Counselling Clinic is actually a project of Grenada Community Development Agency. Grenada was established in 1986, and within 2 years of their establishment, they established the Legal Aid and Counselling Clinic. And at the time, the function of the agency really was to provide direct support, primarily in legal matters and paralegal matters, to persons, especially rural families, women in particular, and children who were dealing with a host of issues that were related to things like even land tenure, family land issues, and so on and so forth. And then as the work happened in the early years, there was a recognition that a lot of the issues that people came with also had a psychosocial component, meaning that if somebody were to spend some time working with them in terms of understanding the issues and bringing people together to mediate, to discuss, that they were usually in a better position to resolve issues, right? Because when you get lawyers involved, when you go to court, things get contentious, families are driven further apart. So the agency sort of started on with those two main prongs of work, right? The legal side and then the psychosocial side, which is the counseling component. And we've evolved over the years to be a multi-service agency. We provide psychosocial services, so counseling, clinical assessment, and clinical evaluations. We provide social support, and we do a lot of work around juveniles in conflict with the law. Those are young people, primarily young men, who would be arrested and charged with issues rather than having them suffer the punitive, sanctions that are available to the court. We offer programs including counseling and other psychoeducational programs, and those are education programs where we bring groups of young people together to learn about themselves and to understand how to deal with issues like conflict resolution and so forth. And we have developed a particular expertise over the years in working around the issue of gender-based violence prevention. So we work with perpetrators of violence prevention. Again, it's a big word, but that's primarily persons who commit offenses, under the domestic violence legislation. We have a program called Man to Man, locally, which you're familiar with, that provides a psychoeducational opportunity for men to come together, discuss issues about where the violence may have come from, understanding themselves, understanding women, understanding how violence impacts them, their families, and the society. And we have a related program, which is called the Changes Program, that primarily works with women who are survivors of gender-based violence. So we have developed a host of programs over the years that respond to some of the contemporary issues that we're facing. And unfortunately, as I said, while I think it's a bit unfortunate for us to be discussing some of these heavy issues this early in the morning, it also reminds me that issues like gender-based violence don't have a time of day when they happen. And sometimes it's important for us to keep this issue front and center so that people understand that it is a challenge that we have to deal with every day, and not just in a responsive way. When something happens, we react in a reactionary way, rather. We react in anger and with high emotion and passion for a day or two or three, and then we move on. 7 days. Yeah, at the most 7 days, and then we move on, yeah.
So let me ask you this. The Legal Aid and Counseling Clinic, it was inaugurated in what year?
It was established in 1988, so it's now 34 years.
34 years. Mm-hmm. Now, I happen to know that you've been around the Legal Aid and Counseling Clinic for, if not 34 years, maybe 33 and a third. All right? Now, having said that, in terms of the growth and development of the Legal Aid and Counseling Clinic, the workload, how has it been progressing or regressing? Is there a more dire need for it now than in the earlier years of its inception?
Yeah. The agency has evolved in terms of what we do, right? When we started off, we had a more limited mandate than we now have, because, as I explained earlier, we've sort of developed new programs to respond to new challenges in the society. So the agency has evolved. Our team are very professional. We have persons at master's level as counselors and so on. We have an attorney at law in our legal department. So the agency is growing, but I almost feel sad that we have such a need for the services of an agency like Legal Aid and Counseling Clinic in Grenada, because the fact that our workload continues to get heavier, and not only Legal Aid but other agencies like ours that do this type of work have more and more demand, it means that it seems that a lot of the work we're doing is either, I don't want to say missing the mark, because I think we are having an impact. I think we're in a better place today than we were 34 years ago. And yes, I've been involved in this work since 1988. Not originally with Legal Aid, but including with Legal Aid and almost all the social service agencies over the years. So I've had a pretty good vantage point from which to look at the progress that we're making and to look at the needs that we need to continue to address. Unfortunately, unfortunately, some of the challenges are getting worse, or they're much more visible. And I think we could probably, agencies like Legal Aid can take a certain amount of credit for the fact that we have done so much public awareness building, so much education, that we now have people who are more willing to come out and speak about the issues, advocate for change in the issues. But we also still have real problems to deal with in terms of the behavior of our people, both male and female.
Let me ask you this. The role that you play now and your involvement, you said, from since 1988.
Yeah.
When you look at the gravity of the psychosocial and psychoeducational mishaps that we're having, that even in today's day, where we think that the world has gotten so modernized that we expect to see a reduction, if not a total elimination, of gender-based violence. How do you sleep at night?
Well, I try to remember that I'm only able to do so much. The agency can only do so much. We go in every day with an intention to give us our best shot, to try to touch somebody, a young person, a perpetrator, a survivor, somebody who needs support to help them to get to a better place, so that they can make more informed decisions. They can handle conflict better. They can communicate better with their partners, with their children, and so on. And I remind myself that when I leave the office, I try to leave. I have to make an effort to leave the work there, because I'm the director of Legal Aid and Counselling Clinic, but I'm also a husband. I'm a father. I'm a stepfather, right, and I'm a son. So at the end of the day, there are many responsibilities that I have to carry when I'm not sitting inside of Legal Aid and Counselling Clinic. You can't separate yourself from the work, but it is important for us in this sector to understand that self-care is critical, so that we have to learn to leave the work at work. To the extent possible. It's not always possible. And you need to try to invest in self-care and quality time with yourself and with your family, because that is a therapy that gives us the energy to keep going. But sometimes it's very difficult. And especially when you have, like the incident that happened last week, and then people immediately start to shout and scream at the top of their lungs, what's Legal Aid doing, and where Buckmire and them, and why this still happening in Grenada? A lot of what is happening in terms of gender-based violence is happening not because the agencies are failing to do work. A lot of it is happening because of our societal responses to some of these challenges. And I hate to say this, and I'm sure there are a couple of people who are probably going to call and challenge me if it's an open show.
Of course it is.
And if not, they'll probably call to the office. There's a certain level of hypocrisy, right, that allows issues like gender-based violence and sexual violence to continue to have such a prominent place in our society. If it is happening in the other family, in the other community, we feel empowered to complain about it and to demand action against it. But when we see it happening right in our next door to us, or maybe within our own homes, and we know that some of our family members might be perpetrators, we don't want to talk about that at all. So there's that level of hypocrisy on the one side. There's a hypocrisy in another way, where when agencies like Legal Aid, and last Friday before last, the Royal Grenada Police Force on the 28th of October organized an event for students for Child Month. We were a co-sponsor of the event, and sometimes we reach out to social partners, we put ads on the radio and so on, inviting people to participate in those events. And the kind of responses we get, well, all you just matching, that ain't making no difference. All you're only talking about it, that ain't making no difference. So people feel comfortable to sit down and be armchair advocates, right? They want to sit home, call the radio station, complain about the issue, and feel like they've done their part. But if you're going to really make an impact and you want to see a better change, you have to get off the armchair and get more involved in the work as a volunteer in whatever capacity you can. So we have a very unfortunate and very troubling situation of gender-based violence in Grenada. We have an even worse problem of sexual violence in Grenada, right? In terms of violence against our children. And on the 28th, one of the assistant superintendents of police was making the point that when you look at our sizes list every year, they're dominated by sexual offenses, and a lot of it is sexual offenses against children.
Minors.
Right? Why is that happening? And you can't tell me that a small island like Grenada, where everybody seems to know everybody's business, we have such a high incidence of sexual violence, and people don't know who the perpetrators are, right? But the hypocrisy comes in when We prefer not to talk about it when it's close to our home. We will make noise about it when it's somewhere else. And when we have an opportunity to do something about it, we don't, right?
So let me ask you this. I mean, working in that field for so long must give you a deep appreciation for causative agents and so forth. Why? Why do you think that, as you said, a small island as Grenada has such a high perpetuation of sexual offenses, sexual violence? Why do you think so? Where is that problem stemming from?
Most types of violence, gender-based violence, of which sexual violence is a subcomponent, right? Most incidences of violence are rooted in the issues of power and control. The abuser wants to exercise a certain amount of power and control over the abused. Whether that power and control makes a person feel validated as a big man, a big woman, more powerful, whatever it is, those two elements of power and control tends to fuel the incidences of violence. And it is sometimes because people have not been taught to A, control their impulses, B, to appreciate themselves for who they are. And I could talk for about a week about why we're here in that place as men and young men in our country, where a lot of us still feel that the best way we can feel empowered is to take advantage of somebody else.
Physicality.
A lot of it has to do with our, socialization, how we were brought up, what we learned at home and in the community, and so on. So we have this issue of power and control. We also have some other driving factors, of course, that are sort of more generic, broader issues. Poverty is one of them, and I want to say that carefully, because I don't want it to come over that we're saying, well, because people may not have resources or access to economic or financial resources, that they must be victims or they must be perpetrators. But we see the fact that some people do not have access to adequate financial resources to meet the needs of their families or their individual needs, that they may either get into or choose to stay in relationships that are disadvantageous to them, in terms of the fact that these relationships do have violence as a component. Some people feel that if I don't stay, the little benefit that I get out of the relationship when I'm not getting the abuse, if I don't stay, then my family will be at a disadvantage. And then let's talk about those perpetrators who particularly prey on children, on young children within their homes, who are made to feel that they are responsible for the welfare of their family, and the perpetrator will tell a child, if you report, if you complain, I'm going to stop doing this, I'm going to stop paying the rent, I'm going to stop buying food, I'm going to stop paying for cable, how are you going to get a phone, These are real things. Sometimes when we talk about these issues, people tend to think we're talking fiction or stuff that happens in other countries. These are some of the reasons. If you speak to people at the Special Victims Unit or the Child Protection Authority or the Ministry of Social Development, and certainly inside of Legal Aid and Counselling Clinic, these are some of the things we hear victims say all the time, that they are threatened, that if they report, if they complain, if they don't submit to the abuse, their families will be harmed, whether physically harmed or harmed in terms of the withholding of economic resources that benefit the family. So we do have poverty, we do have unemployment, we do have underemployment. There are a lot of people who are working that are making barely a living wage. In 2022, it is ridiculous that there are people who are still doing a full-time job that are making less than $1,000 a month.
$800 and $600.
Right? But that's the reality. And if you look around, my wife went to the supermarket yesterday. We do this together every 2 weeks, but I had to be in Grenville with a group of young men in the alternatives program, so she went by herself. And I can tell you that, when you look at the receipts, and I'm sure many people can attest to that, every time we've gone to the supermarket between August and yesterday, the same amount of goods have gone up by about $50 to $100 every single trip, right? So it means that the economic power that people need to have is not there. The salaries are low, etc., etc. So perpetrators and predators are taking advantage of these needs of persons with less access to economic resources, and that's another one of the driving factors.
All right, I'm going to ask you another question before we take a break. And callers, you feel free to call in and share your queries, get some clarification if there's anything that you think. Make sure it sort of falls in line with what we're discussing this morning. Now, predominantly, right? I'm not very much old, neither am I young. We're getting there, okay? We're getting there.
Yeah.
And
you're greater than you used to be.
That's wisdom. I've got no wiser. All right. Predominantly, when we heard about gender-based violence in the past, we always thought it's a man.
Mm-hmm.
Has that been changing in recent time? Because we know for a fact, I mean, as you said, I'm a sort of byproduct of legal aid as well, and so I have this, but that trend is changing because we do have, although maybe not at the same proportion, but we do have. It's no longer a chauvinistic thing that it's a male dominated flaw. Is it safe to say that?
Well, let me answer it this way. The dynamics of intimate relationships are changing, right? We're no longer only dealing with heterosexual relationship where a man meets a female and they become partners, right? We're also seeing relationships that are same-sex relationship, both male and male same-sex relationship, female and female same-sex relationships. So the relationship dynamics are changing. But what we're seeing still is that in terms of domestic violence, intimate partner violence, these types of violence, primarily still in Grenada, the main perpetrators or the larger number of perpetrators of acts of violence in relationships are men, right? And so we have to understand that as a dynamic and understand our need to work with young boys before they become men and they get into relationships, and we need to work with men to understand ways of dealing with things like managing conflict and communication and so forth. So many acts of violence occur because people are just not able to articulate their feelings and their emotions in a non-violent way. So we need to work on it with young men and men in terms of dealing with that. We have an urgent need as well to continue to work with women to just understand their own self-worth and dignity and so on, and also to help them to be able to negotiate, to handle conflict in a non-violent way, because we are seeing a lot of violence in Grenada. In every sphere, we're seeing violence, men on men violence. Just in the community, men fight over random things.
Over a cigarette lighter?
Yeah, simple random things. We see a lot of young men who are fighting on the school ground and the playground, etc. So violence is an issue that we have to deal with. But specific to the context of gender-based violence, sexual violence, intimate partner violence, the larger number of perpetrators are men. That is not to say, I'm not sitting here saying that we do not have some men who are victims of intimate partner violence. We do have some, but a very small percentage when you look at the overall picture. But that's why I'm saying we need to work with all our people, men and boys, women and girls, to help them to understand that there are non-violent ways to deal with conflict. A lot of it has to be done through education, preventative education at the school and community level. When we've missed that mark and persons commit offenses and get arrested and charged, we have to offer programs like our psychoeducational program, Man-to-Man Changes Alternatives, for example, that offer persons an opportunity to get that information and learn those skills, even if they've already committed an offense. Because nobody is irredeemable, everybody can be helped. And helping everybody to be better communicators and mediators and better conflict managers helps our society in the long run.
All right, folks, we've got to take a commercial break. When we get back, we'll continue the conversation with Mr. Tyrone Buckmire. He is the director of the Legal Aid and Counselling Clinic. We'll be back after these messages. Don't you go anywhere.
Total is one of the world's largest oil companies with a top quality line of lubricants. Total Lubricants has a full product line from passenger cars, motorcycle, heavy industrial equipment, mining, trucking, agriculture, and manufacturing machines and vehicles. Total Lubricants, winning championships in motorsports, including Formula One and World Rally Championships. Total Lubricants are available at all Rubis service stations, leading automotive shops, and distributed by Huggins.
Let's mingle and jingle.
You mean jingle and mingle, right?
Does it really matter? Mingle and Jingle, the mid-morning program that will drive the Christmas season. Weekdays from 10 a.m. to 12 noon on Classic Radio, GBN Television, and all GBN social media platforms.
It's where the deals of the season are, where the Christmas music is played, holiday traditions are relived, and where all the fun is.
Mingle and Jingle.
Or Jingle and Mingle. Mid-mornings from November 14th to December 23rd only on the GBN network.
Made possible by
Flow,
West the Hall Rums,
Hard On Plus,
Judy Free Caribbean Holdings,
Ace Hardware,
Gittins Healthcare, and
Grenville Credit Union.
My granddaughter.
That's not how you cross the pedestrian crossing.
Really? One day I just woke up and I saw pedestrian crosswalks on the road. No one really showed me how to use them properly.
Well, this is how it's done. You never cross before.
Okay, welcome back, viewers and listeners, to the conversation this morning. I'm speaking with Mr. Tyrone Buckmire, the director of the Legal Aid and Counselling Clinic. Callers, this is where you can call in and, ask your questions, voice your concerns. But please, in the interest of time, it's got to be brief. All right, it's got to be very brief. And right away, the phone lines are on. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning.
Welcome to the program.
Oh, yeah, okay. That program resonates a lot to me in a sense. I understand what Mr. Buckmire is saying, especially with the hypocrisy. But what I think it is, this is something I think should be taught in schools from since boys and girls up to a young age, especially boys, because in schools, especially nowadays, you have boys and girls going to the same school and sitting in the same class and everything. You can identify guys who may grow up to be women abusers or child abusers, whichever way you want to look at it, because they portray incidents of that during their young stages. I will tell you what, there is something again here that we need to look at, and I will try to be brief. what I think happened is the law. And when I say the law, because I went through a situation years ago, right, that caused me to leave Grenada, is that, you know, my dad used to, I would say, abuse my mom. And I took up for her. And I told him one night, I said, you're not going to hit mommy tonight because she's not doing anything. And he in the arguing with each other or whatever, he ended up hitting her, slapping her in the face. And I just turned around and take a bottle and hit him in the head. I had to run. But I tell you what happened with the law, I blame the law. When he called the police, when the police came, they wanted to go with me. You understand? He is the perpetrator. He is the one that did, but they wanted to go with me. And I nearly committed suicide because I was going to run. If they decided to run behind, I would have run straight over precipice. That was my idea. Okay. So I think to save all these things, I think at the end of the day, God came and I ended up leaving Grenada, and I'm a well. And I still come back to Grenada and mine him before he died. But I would say the law has to look at it too easy when men commit crime in terms of abusing women and children. The penalties are too lenient. So then they go, they spend a few months, they may pay a few dollars, and then they come back with and do the same thing again. So I believe the penalties have to be more stiffer in order to deter them.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, caller. We get the gist of it.
Yeah, and two things in terms of teaching it at the school level. Yes, attempts have been made to do this. We have developed a health and family life education program, which is intended to address some of the issues like communication and so forth, but in a very packed school calendar every day. Sometimes it's not taught in an exhaustive way as we need to. We do go into schools on the request of the schools to do some of this, but we need more of it. In terms of the law, caller, I hope the incident that you mentioned in terms of you in your childhood is quite some years in the past, because I know that between 2001 and now, Grenada has had a number of revisions to legislation. We have a Domestic Violence Act. We have a whole number of remedies under the law that we did not have, or they were not as well defined before. Legal Aid and Counselling Clinic has worked with Child Protection Authority and the government of Grenada to train a lot of police officers. We now have a dedicated special victims unit within the Royal Grenada Police Force. So I'm saying we're not at a perfect place, but we've made a lot of strides that put us in a better place than we were, and I think we're seeing a better response to these issues, but it is a work in progress. And again, the hypocrisy in terms of sometimes when the police are trying to do their job, a lot of people who know just say, I'm not saying anything. So we call and we complain. Some of us even call into the police and give a report, but then we refuse to give a statement, we refuse to go to court. So we have to understand that it's going to take an all-of-country approach. The schools, the churches, the government, through different ministries, agencies like Legal Aid and Counselling Clinic, the media, GBN, and everybody else to come on board to make sure that there's active public education about the issues and about the law in relation to those issues. And I think we'll see even more progress as we go forward. The Facebook thing.
Yes. Okay, to our viewers on Facebook, on our Facebook platform, we do apologize, but it's not, I know you're having problems getting to us. It's not a GBN's fault, it's a Facebook fault, so we do apologize for that on behalf of Facebook, not the GBN. It's not a GBN's issue. We've got another caller. Good morning, caller.
Mr. Innocent.
Morning, welcome.
In that question to your man that sits next to you as I'm seeing on TV.
Go to the question,
Mr. Buckmire, sorry. Do you think, well, let me make a little comment first. I pity the last or the first caller that called and explained what he did his father. Do you think, or do you know that man likely to abuse his father? And you talked about education. Do you think education in school, to educate people in the sexual relationship in school? When I say sexual relationship, not actually sex, in family, bringing up family, uniting, or whatever it is. Do you think it's a hard subject to teach in school? I had an experience where I was talking to a group of, I can't tell you, pupils, and we were talking about healthy living. And I mentioned that if you live in a small, as you all would say, a small little house, small and little, and you are crowded you think that is likely to occur easier? Not at the same time or in the same thing, but the family would be seeing each other and they would be sexually aroused for some reason or the other. And this may carry out in the house when the mother is not there or when the father is not there. And this may continue in the schools and elsewhere. Explain that for me.
Okay, thank you, caller.
Well, I'm not going to give an explanation. I'll try to answer your question that yes, the fact that some of our households are very small may create certain challenges for persons in terms of being able to manage their emotions and so forth. But remember, if we have education and if we help parents to talk to their children about, you know, the physical and emotional development, about sexuality and so on, there is a better chance that these problems will not occur, right? So at the end of the day, a lot is related to education, not just the education that we can provide at school, but education that parents can provide at home, education that the church can provide in terms of what is acceptable and not acceptable. But also every family's dynamic is different. We sometimes tend to think that, as you say, the small little house is more likely to have these problems. And we know of some really big houses where the same problems occur.
Because there are some safe havens.
Right? and it's because, again, of people's attitude, people's inability to understand how to manage their emotions, how to manage their impulses, and also sometimes people feeling that because they have more resources or they control the family's resources, they have a right to exploit members of the family in an abusive way because they are the ones providing the bread. So there are a lot of issues.
Okay. All right. While we await our next caller, time is really elapsing on us rapidly. But when I called you, there was a different idea in my head that I wanted to, really get into, and you know what it is that incident that last week. But now we were not even touching that because we're looking at the root causes of such events. Mm-hmm. But is it safe to say that forums like these are absolutely needed? Because now we have so many different media that we can reach people. Let's take this caller. Good morning, caller.
Morning.
Welcome to the program.
How are you? Morning.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
No, right. Very good program, eh?
Thank you.
But somehow, I think, look, we cannot take violence and abuse in isolation. Mr. Buckmire, sir? Yeah, good morning. No, I am saying that, look, any type of abuse is wrong. Any type of violence is wrong. The name alone speaks for itself. Abuse, right? One abuse leads to the next. How can you take abuse? Okay, how can you take abuse and violence in isolation? Okay, because one type of violence leads to the next. One type of abuse leads to the next. So we need to tackle these things in a general, holistic way. I want to hear Mr. Buckmire respond to this thing.
Thank you very much, caller.
Thank you, caller. You agree with me because I just said earlier that we have to have a whole of nation approach, right? Yes. With government, church, school, because none of these issues can be dealt with in isolation. Everything that we do impacts on something else that we will do and something that other persons will do. So we cannot take them in isolation. That is why we need to ensure that programs like this happen, because we get the public involved in the conversation, but we don't want the public to just be armchair advocates who call and give an opinion or ask a question and then move on as if they've done their part.
Until when it hits home.
Until then something happens. We need to have the government do more in terms of investing in the programs directly as government and through agencies like Legal Aid and National Organization of Women and Planned Parenthood Association and so forth. So we have the resources to be able to go out there and do public education. I know, Gordon, we talked about sort of touching on the issue that happened last week, but I've also said to the media over and over again, as the director of Legal Aid and Counselling Clinic, I'm not going to make a reactionary statement every time something happens, because when people ask us, well, what Legal Aid doing about that, what happened last week? Nothing about what happened last week in isolation. But for years, we have been working with men and boys and women and girls to help persons to understand how to deal with conflict in relationships, how to deal with emotions, how to negotiate your way out of a relationship, and how to understand the person you're going into a relationship with. We just jump into relationship. We have situationship. We have happeningships that just, a thing going on without understanding the persons and the person's tendency to be violent or abusive. So it must take a whole of country approach. I really appreciate that point you made, caller. It cannot be done in isolation. The church has a critical role to play in terms of educating the congregations about these issues as part of services, right? And outside of services in Men's Week and Women's Week and Youth Week and all of those different occasions, bringing people to talk to your congregations. The schools are overworked. There's so much on the calendar that teachers have to get through in a given day that it might be difficult for them to add another subject. But the health and family life education was deliberately created over 30 years ago. That curriculum was developed to address some of these issues. So it's a work in progress. Let's not think that this program this morning is going to be the solution to everything, and I don't have the answers to everything, but we're trying to raise awareness so that as we go forward, we'll become better at dealing with these issues.
We have another caller. Good morning, caller.
Good morning, Mr. Joseph, and good morning, Mr. Buckmire.
Good morning, Mr.
Sometimes these things cause me to get disturbed in my spirit. Because, Mr. Buckmire, Mr. Joseph, we have been making laws, we have been speaking, we have been making programs, we have been doing all kinds of things, we have been punishing people for the crime, but yet it is not even stopping, but increasing. And I'm saying, as you mentioned, the church has failed. Because the Word of God tells us certain things. Right? When Jesus came, he cast out demons from people. We are not looking at the demonic forces that are operating in the bodies of people. Sometimes the people themselves don't know why they're doing what they're doing. They cannot stop. They want to stop. It's not their character, but they just have to do it. If we listen to churches where they do deliverances, we don't have that in Grenada. They seem to be alien to Grenada. But in countries like when I look at synagogues set up on nation, I look at the Temple of the Lord's Church, and I look at videos on YouTube that they produce, and you see people who are possessed with demons and the things that they were doing. When they get delivered, that's a totally different person, a new person. And so what we have to do is to get people who would pray with people who have these kind of tendencies, because it is a spiritual problem, not a physical. But we're only looking at the physical, and all the laws that we are making from year to year does not change anything. It becomes more acute. So it is a spiritual problem, and that's where the church has failed the nation. The church needs to rise up, need to repent, because it says, if my people would repent and seek my face and turn from the wicked ways, I will hear from him. I will heal the land. Okay. You see, so that is where we have to go. We have to turn back to God, repent, and ask God to take control of our nation.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, caller.
Well, very powerfully spoken, and appreciate the sentiments of the caller. Two things I want to say in relation to that. Spirituality means different things to different people, and some people's spiritual experiences or the experiences they've had within the spiritual sphere, when you're talking in terms of church and religion, for a lot of people, and I'm not going to apologize for what I'm about to say, but I know I'll get some backlash for saying it. For a lot of people, I hesitate to say all we need to do is go back to the church, because in reality, for a lot of Grenadian adults today, their childhood in church was some of the most traumatic moments that they ever experienced. So for some people, the church has been the source of the greatest pain and trauma in their lives. And I will not sit here and say, well, let's just all go back to church wholesale and hope it will solve the problem. But there is a place for that, for those who believe it, for those who are committed to that sort of work and intervention, by all means, because I know there is a place for it, and there are those who strongly believe in it and support it. But we cannot make it a national mandate, right? And the second thing I want to say, in terms of the business about demonic possession, I sometimes I worry that when we say, oh well, people can't control themselves and it's because of demonic possession, we give them an excuse to continue the bad behavior because they have somebody or something to blame it on, and they don't look internally at their behavior and why that behavior is happening. But again, sometimes it's hard for an individual to do that without some sort of supportive network or intervention. So again, whole of country approach, all of us, wherever we are, doing the part that we can to ensure that we help persons to learn to manage their impulses, manage their emotions, negotiate, discuss things, communicate in an effective way. Because if we don't do that, we're going to have people who feel lost, cannot get help, or feel that they have no access to help, and feel that the only way for them to feel powerful and relevant is to abuse and take advantage of somebody else. And as the gentleman say, all abuse is abuse, all violence is violence, and our work should be around trying to stamp out abuse and violence in our society for the sake of everyone in our communities.
There are so many questions to be asked and answered, but we've run out of time. But what I can promise you is that this is the start to something.
Okay.
All right. It is a start to something. I can hear the passion from the callers. I know how I'm feeling. I know how much information you have to disseminate. But folks, we've run out of time. I've been speaking with Mr. Tyrone Buckmire. He is the director of the Legal Aid and Counselling Clinic. And thank you for your calls. Those of you who tried calling and did not get through, we apologize for that. Our Facebook viewers, we do apologize for the inconvenience caused, but it's not a fault of the GBN. Okay, so Mr. Buckmire, thank you very much. And we'll have a further conversation and see how, because education is the key. There's a very pertinent question that I needed to ask, but we've run out of time. We'll try to make this a regular fit here.
We'll be happy to come back. We feel we have a very big role in educating the public to address these issues. So anytime you would like us to come in and have a conversation, please reach out to us. Thank you so much.
Folks, this is as far as we can go with this segment of programming this morning. Thank you once again for participating, and thank you for being a part.